All right, welcome to our final class in the series for Excel. This one is called Pivot. We are learning today what a pivot table is, where you would use one, and how to link relevant data between your sheets and workbooks. As usual, Dave is manning the chat window, so don't be afraid to ask questions there as well as we're going. One more person coming in. Hello, I was just giving everybody the welcome. So we are looking at pivot tables today, where you're using one, how to link relevant data, and Dave is manning our chat window, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask there as well. Earlier, I sent out a spreadsheet that has some voter registration data in it. You should see that on your screen right now. If you don't, please let me know. And feel free to open that up as well as we are working so you can kind of follow along as I go. So if you haven't already, go ahead and open up the pivot spreadsheet that I sent out. Make sure you enable the editing and click on any one of the cells. Across the top in the columns, you're going to see voter ID, party affiliation, a precinct, the age group, last voted, years registered, and ballot status as well. None of that is all that exciting, so we're going to put ourselves into a scenario to make it slightly more exciting. So you've just gotten a new job as the campaign manager of a politician who's running for office. That politician is a member of the Republican Party. The area that they represent is here in Mechanicsburg. In Mechanicsburg, we know we have independents, Democrats, Green Party, and Republicans, as well as those who have declined to answer what they were as our constituents. Now, your new boss wants you to flip over as many of the independents, the Green Party members, and undeclared citizens as you possibly can. You have a staff of 6 people that report to you. They're all of different age ranges, and you also have a good budget for materials. We have about 4,000 records on our sheet, so it's not like we can simply look at the data and start to analyze it. We're going to have to do something with it in order to actually get some analyzing done. So we need to be able to focus on a couple of specific things. For instance, if I were working for the candidate, I would want to know what the party breakdowns are for each precinct so I don't waste my time in an area that is dramatically skewed to the other party and has been for the last 50 years. I'd also want to know how many buttons or pamphlets or other materials that I might need if I were visiting that particular precinct. Another thing I might want to know is what age ranges vote. Having the right amount of employees in the relatable age ranges to appeal to voters is going to be essential in order to flip those voters to Republicans. So all of that said, this is where pivot tables start to come in. You're going to be able to slice up the info into chunks and have it start to answer some of those questions. So we're going to start from easy and work our way up to a little bit more difficult. So in Excel, from your ribbon, what I want you to do is go up to Insert, and I want you to be able to find this recommended pivot tables. Excel has enough AI to realize what data is going to be at least somewhat relevant to you, which is kind of fun. So the first suggestion is the sum of voters by party, and we want to know that. So let's go ahead, click on that, click OK. That's going to create a new sheet for us that gives us all of our parties pulled out and the number of voters by party. So a couple of things I want you to take a look at as we're looking at this really quick pivot table that we just created. We know that we had 4,000 records in our initial sheet. We have a grand total of 4,000 voters listed here. That's incredibly important because it tells us that our data is sound, nothing is misspelled or misrepresented inside of that data. So we know the data that we have is good. It also tells us what parties are listed. We have our independent party, the people that declined to comment, the Democrats, the Greens, and the Republicans. And we also can tell from this pivot table how many votes can our two parties that we're going to end up using anyway be fighting over? So we know that we've got 61 independent voters, 550 that declined to answer, and 41 that are Green Party. Those are the votes that we are after. If we can get some Democrats too, fantastic. But at least this way, we know what our numbers actually are. Okay, so we're going to rename this sheet. We're going to call it party numbers. The way to do that is down here on sheet number 2. If you right-click on it and then click rename, you can rename it to anything that you want. I'm actually going to call it party numbers. Then hit enter, and that will rename your sheet for you. So at this point, you should have 3 sheets: party numbers, voters, and staffers. Okay, so we are going to hop back over onto our voter sheet, and we're going to do another pivot table because there's some additional information that we want, and we want to know the count of voters by precinct and party. The reason that we want to know that is we want to know how many people are where and in what party that they are. So we're going to come back to our recommended pivot tables. And we want to know the count of voters by precinct and party. And it's in here somewhere, I believe. Count of voters by precinct and party. So there it is. We're going to create that. It's going to drop it onto a new sheet for us. This gives us our 22 precincts, and all the numbers inside of those precincts for us. So we know about how our numbers are distributed through the precincts. Again, a couple of things that you want to take a look at: the grand totals for each one of those and the actual grand total, just to make sure that it pulled all of the data for us. And it did. Fantastic. So we're also going to rename the sheet so that we have it. Right-click on it, click rename, and this one is precincts by party and count. So while it's not necessary to rename your sheets as you work, as you're flipping through your data, it's usually easier to know what you're looking at any given time, especially if you are sending any of this to another person. They won't have any idea what it is, and that's why I rename all my sheets all the time. All right, now, at this point, we can start to decide how it is that we're going to mobilize our staff to the different precincts to start gathering voters to our side. Now, I would want to know the number of voters by age group that exist in each precinct. And that was not one of the suggested options from Excel. Excel's smart, but it's not that smart. So if we go back to our main sheet, which is our voters sheet, and I move my notes a little bit so I can see where I'm at, we go to Insert and Pivot Table. And we are going to create one manually. Now, what I want you to take a look at here quick, it's going to tell you to select a table or range. If you see the little lines around your data, little dancing ants, whatever you want to call them, you'll see that your entire table is selected there. So we're good to go. Where do we want to put it? We want to put it on a new worksheet. Fantastic. So we do that. And then it's going to give us this nice little list over here. I'm going to move this over so you can see it a little bit better, with all of our pivot table fields that we're going to use. So what we're going to do is break out our data by precinct. So that's going to be our row value. So we're going to grab a hold of precinct here. You'll see that you get the compass point there on your mouse. So you can grab it, drag and drop it down into rows. And now we have our precincts broken out. We know that we need to know what the party breakdowns are. So that's going to go into our columns. So we're going to grab party and pull it into our column. All right, that looks fantastic. And then in order to get the numbers into our party by precinct, we also need to put party into our sum values. So we're going to take our party, put them down into values over here, and poof, we have numbers. Great. So this is a table that we've already created, which, you know, yay, we've already done that with one of the recommended ones. However, we didn't break it out by ages. So we're also going to add age group to our rows. And just like that, we've now broken out every single one of our precincts by age range, and we can see how many people belong to each one of those parties by age range. So we now have actual data that we can do something with. All right, so at this point, we have all the data that we need to build some links between the data and start to mobilize our staff. So we're going to use a few formulas next, don't panic, to pull data from different sheets and create that mobilization plan. But before we do that, does anyone have any questions on what I've done so far or pivot tables in general? I'm not seeing any questions. So either everyone's dead or I did an okay job. Okay, so, all right. So what we want to accomplish next is assigning our staffers to different precincts based on the votes that we could possibly get. So we know that we have independents, those who declined to answer, and Green Party members that we're actively targeting. There is a staffer sheet in our workbook that lists the staffers that we have available to us and the age ranges that they are best suited to reach. So let's take a quick look at that. You'll see our staffers right there. We know that Joe Smith represents the ages between 18 and 30. Sandy Roberts is between 61 and 70, and the other group of staffers as well. So we know we have people that are assigned to those age ranges. Great. So what we're going to do is construct a formula that will populate the cells with our staffers if and only if there are people in those precincts that we want to target. So the easiest way to figure out how to get started writing an Excel formula is to construct it in words first. So what we know we want is, so I want to look at the precinct by age sheet that we have here. And then at C5, which would be here, D5. Actually, this should be up 2 more. So I'm going to get rid of these here very quickly. Okay. Actually, I think I need 1 on top of there. Hang on here for just a second. I'm going to insert 1 row so this all works out okay with how I have everything built. Okay, so at I think I'm missing 1 more for 1 thing. Hang on here for just a second. All right, sorry about that. I had actually built everything ahead of time and I wanted to make sure that it would line up as I told you that. So if you don't have a column to the right of your precincts and 1 row above it. Go ahead and do that now so it looks exactly like mine. And that way everything will work out as we are writing this formula, and I don't want to have to redo the formula because it's a little long. Okay, so what we want to do here is look at your precinct by age sheet, then at C5 or D5 or F5, if there is a number in any one of them, I want to assign my staffer in the corresponding age range to that precinct. And if C5 or D5 or F5 do not have a number, return no assignment to me in cell J5, right there. So basically what I want it to do is say, if there's anybody in the independents, in the declines, or the greens, I want to know that, and I want to assign a staffer to go out to that precinct, interface with those people, and try to flip them. So we're going to write a formula to do just that. So to start to build our formula, click in J5, because this is where our formula is going to go. And we're going to write an if statement to determine if there are numbers in CD or F5. So what we want to do is do equal if. So the if statement takes 3 parameters. The first is what we want to check. The second is what to do if it's true. And the third is what to do if it is false. So does a number exist in CD or F5? And Excel is going to use a function to do this called OR. So to check to see if a number is in any of those locations, what we're going to write is open paren, or open paren. We're going to use another statement called is number, basically saying, is there a number there? We're going to tell it where. So we're going to look in C5. We are going to close that paren, put a comma in, because we're going to look for the next spot. We're going to ask, is there a number in D5? Comma, is there a number in F5? And then we need to close our paren and put a comma in, because there's more information that we have to put in this. So this is going to seem like a ginormous thing, but it's really not. All right, and I have made a typo. So there's not an open paren in front of is number right here. So we're going to pull that out. All right, so the statement is logical at this point. Okay, so now we're on to the second part of our if statement. What happens if there are numbers in CD or F5? Well, we want to be able to check our staffer sheet and see who corresponds to the age range in column B on the precinct by age sheet. And to do this, we're going to use a formula called VLOOKUP. I don't know if anybody's used VLOOKUPs before, but they are incredibly powerful things to know how to do. VLOOKUP uses 4 parameters. The first is what we're looking for. The second is where we're looking for it. Third is what value we're returning. And the last one is how exact do we actually have to be to match it? Can we get close, or does it have to be exact? So that statement looks like this. So we're going to do VLOOKUP. Oops, I am really having trouble typing today. might have been the 8,000 cups of coffee I had this morning, but who's counting? All right, so where are we looking at this point? We are looking at B5. We are looking on our staffer sheet. We know that for sure. And then I want to look at something very specific. Now, anytime we look at something specifically, we want to use a $sign. And this says we're going to use an absolute value here. We're absolutely going to use the range between A2 and B7. So the way that we specify that is our $sign. So A, and then 2, colon, $sign B, $7. We want to know what column that we're actually looking at. And if you've looked at your staffers table, you know that the staffers' names are in column 2 there, or column B. So we're looking at our second column. And then, do we need to have an approximate match, or do we need an exact match? I don't think I need this to be exact in this case. So I'm going to put true in here, because I just need to get close. I'm going to close my paren. And then the bad news is we're going to put one more comma after here because there's just a little bit more. So we've done pretty much everything that we needed to do so far. The only thing that we need to add to all of this is what we're going to return if there are no numbers in the cells that we're looking at. So we know that we're putting in the staffer's name if there are numbers in C5, D5, or F5. If there are not numbers in C5, D5, or F5, what are we putting in there? In this case, I'm going to put the words no assignment. And we need to make sure that we have parentheses, little quote marks in there, and then an end paren. And that is our entire formula. So you can either hit enter or your check mark. And what you should get is your staffer's name in there, because in the C5, D5, or F5, there is at least one number. So it pulled Joe Smith from our staffer's table and populated that for us. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm lazy, and there's no way I'm writing that entire formula again and again and again. So in order to pull the rest of our data, we are going to click in J5. We're going to copy. We're going to click here. We are going to drag down, and we are going to paste just the formula. What that does is it pulls that formula, applies it properly, and puts in all of our information for us. And we can do exactly the same thing on the next batch here. We can just copy that formula right in. It will pull in our staffers as needed. As we keep going, do the same thing. Getting in all of our information that we need, all of our assignments, can mobilize our people. Oh, and look, we found one in precinct 2404 where there really is no targeted voter, and it did return no assignment for us. And there's actually a couple more going down through here. There are a couple places where you could save time with your staffers and not send them out. So there you have it. You've taken some data, you've focused in on what could be important to you, wrote a complex formula to apply a solution to a problem, and all before lunchtime today. Do you feel accomplished? I know I feel accomplished. That's a huge formula. So the important part of everything that we've done today, one is that you took a pretty good sized spreadsheet. You were able to break it up. You looked at things that were actually important to you. Now, it doesn't matter if it's voter data, maybe it's sales data, maybe it is how a plant is running, but no matter what the data is, when you have that many records, there's no way to analyze it properly by looking at it. You're going to have to break it up in some way. One of the best ways and one of the fastest ways to do it is to use pivot tables like this. The other thing that I want you to be aware of is the formula that we wrote today. Yes, it's complicated, but we learned a lot of things today. We learned about the if statement, how many pieces that an if statement actually has. We learned about the is number. Is there a number somewhere? We need to know that. We also learned about VLOOKUPs and what VLOOKUPs actually do. What they're able to do is look up data from another spot and pull it into another sheet. So that doesn't matter if it's in this workbook, another workbook, 3 sheets somewhere else. You can do VLOOKUPs all day long. You just need to give it all of the information that it's looking for. The other thing that we looked at were the absolutes, those dollar signs. So we may need to make sure that we're looking at very specific areas. We know that we need to put dollar signs in. So there's all the things that we've learned today. We've learned about how to build a pivot table on your own. We've learned about the recommended pivot tables. We've gotten an if statement, an or statement, the is numbers, and the VLOOKUPs. Does anyone have any questions about any of those? Have I melted anyone's brain? All right, I'm going to unmute everybody. So I should be able to hear everybody. You should be able to hear me. Does anybody have any questions? All right, Dave put one in the chat window. If anybody has a specific question about something they would like to set up, how should they get help? Easiest way is to contact Dave because he's really good at this. I can teach it, but I am not fantastic with the formulas. I can do some of them, but not all of them. But by all means, if you need help, please ask. We will help you. All right, if there aren't any other questions, that's pretty much it for today. Very quick class, but we got a lot accomplished. For anybody that needs the recording, I'll be sending this out. You should have the pivot table that I sent out for you as well, so you can go over this a couple more times and see how exactly that I've done it. And again, if you have any questions, just shoot me an email and we will happily get you the answer. That's it. Happy Friday. I've heard it's National Margarita Day, so hopefully that's a fantastic Friday for you. So until next time, see y'all later.